The following podcast is an enticing media production.
Where the Nell have you been? Join us for conversation about life, business, and everything in between. Welcome to What the Nell, where we've got stories to tell. Here's your host, Nell Tice.
Well, hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of the What the Nell podcast with yours truly, Nell Tice, and guest host Steve Trott for another episode in our series, Don't Follow Me. And we're really excited today because we have another guest, and this guest is an awesome one. She's a photographer. She's a branding specialist. She's also host of Ask the Expert, a radio show on Sandcastle Radio every day at noon Eastern, every Friday at noon Eastern. If we went along with every day, she probably would be like, no, you need to cut that out because that's way too much. No. But yeah, she is your branding gal. This is Kelly Johnson. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Nell, and hello, Steve. Glad to be here.
Hey, good to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to be on and part of the party here.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a party because I was trying to reference imposter syndrome with party, and I'm not really sure how you can do that. But today's subject is all about imposter syndrome, and we all know that social media plays a massive part in imposter syndrome. And before we started recording, for whatever reason, Steve Trott wanted to talk about what we defined imposter syndrome as. And I was like, Steve, we need to hit the record button. People want to hear this. So I want to know from both of you, what are your definitions of imposter syndrome?
And Kelly, you got to go first.
I figured because that's your thing, ladies first. I know. I've listened before.
You must have heard last week's episode.
I did. Imposter syndrome. So my interpretation. I would say that would be when you're in your business, right? Your thing, your lane, right? And you're growing, and then you're not sure. Like maybe you get this like big opportunity and you don't know, like, because it's going to take you out of your comfort zone, and you don't know all the things that you feel like you maybe should know about that. And then you start second guessing yourself. You start second guessing what you actually do know. And then that's when you start questioning, oh my gosh, should I be doing this? I don't know. And that's, I think, when imposter syndrome sets in and kind of like what it is.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Steve, what is your definition?
We're in the same ballpark. To sum it up, for me, it's the I'm not good enough thought. And Kelly, you hit the nail on the head there because it usually comes along with big opportunity, which was key that you said that, because you land a big opportunity or something's in front of you that you're chasing. And then you have these moments where it's like, oh, wait a minute. I'm either not prepared for this. I'm not good enough. Am I going to hit the standard of what's expected of me? However, you've proven externally to the world or to your peers or to your colleagues that you are good enough. But personally, you're holding yourself to that standard and you constantly remind yourself you are not good enough. So that in Steve's version of words, that's where I land. It's the I'm not good enough feeling for an opportunity or something that's in front of you.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. So it's interesting you both agree on the big opportunity part. I do agree with that too. Maybe it's just because I haven't had a lot of big opportunities, but I will tell you that my imposter syndrome shows up mostly when I receive some sort of either criticism or I see other people doing similar things. And then I instantly go into the headspace where, oh man, you know what? I didn't do that, or I should have done this, differently, or, well, if this person is criticizing the way that I'm doing this, then maybe I don't really know what I'm doing. And that's when I get hit with it mostly. And for some reason, when I do get, because I have had a couple of opportunities, I get really excited. And then the imposter syndrome in that realm, I think, hits me later. Like after I've done it, then I start to second guess almost when it's finished. If that's weird.
No, you're spot on. It it's hit me in those categories you've just described over and over and over again, and it takes a little bit to overcome that personal thought process when someone gives you negative feedback or even substantial negative feedback.
Mhm.
It's hard not to self-reflect and say to yourself, shoot, I screwed this up.
Yeah.
That I'm not good enough, it's not happening, or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I have a question for both of you. Do
Mm.
you think that imposter syndrome could also be attached to part of your identity as far as like where you're from, like where you grew up? Because
Oh, yeah.
because
Mm.
for me, I grew up in a very small town in northeastern Pennsylvania. Oh, like well, I'm like small town, rural, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, pinch me, or some of these things actually happen to me now because I'm just a girl from, this county in Pennsylvania.
Mhm.
And I don't know that people from this county do these things. Like, should I be?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting that you say that. I don't know that I would have thought about that until you said something. And now that you do, it's kind of like, yeah, this makes total sense because I grew up in the opposite realm. I grew up in a major metropolitan area where there are basically 7 million people that you constantly had to compete with, or somebody knew somebody, or like that was very successful or very popular, and people got opportunities all the time. So it kind of seemed like those opportunities were minimized a little
Yeah.
bit, and that maybe you had to fight harder and do so much more to get further beyond that. And because you're just a number, everybody gets those, the opportunities there. I don't know if what do you think, Steve?
Well, I think hearing the word opportunity directly relates to risk in a way.
Hmm.
So like I feel like depending, yes, where you're at in the world makes a big difference. Big city versus small town roar changes what you're exposed to, but the ability to know that if you're willing to take a risk, I feel like along with that risk comes multiple opportunities, because 9 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10, you take a risk and maybe it doesn't work out. Almost 100% of the time through failure, we find other opportunities. And I think that all directly relates, because small town or big city, there's things out there to go
Sure.
after. We just have to be willing to go after them.
Yeah, and
Um,
absolutely. And I think that the internet and our connectivity in the world, and certainly social media, has helped that along
Yeah.
because, Kelly, do you think that you would have had some opportunities like this had any of that not ever come into existence?
No, no.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, whoever thought that podcasting would be a thing?
Right.
Like, who, or like, I mean, okay, I'm old, right?
You're
So,
not old.
like the internet wasn't even a thing when I was in school. So, having the internet has created so many possibilities and opportunities. And, then, you know, sticking with the topic, like that does lead to imposter syndrome because
Absolutely.
there's a lot of people out there that are doing things that um, they don't have degrees or,
Mhm.
like the piece of paper, like myself included, like,
Totally.
so that, and that's another thing that can lead to imposter syndrome,
Hmm. Yeah.
not
well,
having that piece of paper.
Yeah. Feeling
yeah.
like you're not qualified purely
Right.
from an
Yeah,
education and degree standpoint.
and
Right.
everyone loves the 6 letter word Google, but like if you want to trigger imposter syndrome, all you got to do is Google whatever you're thinking about working on, and you get a million different examples of how everyone else does it. And then you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, can I do this or should I do this? And it so in the internet, it's funny. The internet, for as many opportunities it creates just as many potential negatives as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we all grew up in an era where fashion magazines, the, television media, all of that really played a part. And I know, especially for women, I'm assuming that maybe men experience this in their own way. I mean, we had beautiful, super skinny supermodels in the covers of all of the magazines in the 90s that led us to believe we had to look like that to be successful and loved in so many ways. So if you think about it, I mean, social media is that version is,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're constantly comparing ourselves, but now we just have it's in our
More of it.
faces.
Yeah. It's in
Yeah.
our faces all the time. Yeah.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's the same. You're right. It was the same for men, boys, I should say, growing up. I
Mhm.
mean, look at how they modeled professional athletes to the younger generations.
Mm.
You know, you every boy going through high school thought that they had to spend all of their spare time in the weight room
Mm.
because if they weren't muscle bound and didn't have a six pack or something, they weren't going to make it in life. It's completely irrelevant.
Or
So
if you didn't look like Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement.
yeah, right. There you go. There you go.
Okay, we all know who that is.
We
Just
all know
checking.
who that is.
By the
That
way, interesting there. I love that show, by the
was a
way.
great show.
I was a huge Tim Allen fan, and he's probably partially responsible for how I ended up in this field of work.
I mean, that's pretty cool. Well, okay, so maybe no, it's not spoiler alert because he posted this. So Kenny, we're gonna go off topic here for a second. Kenny
Oh,
follows Tim Allen on Instagram, I think it is, or
okay.
Twitter or something. And he said that because he had a show called Last Man Standing,
Yeah.
and of course, Home Improvement. So he posted a graphic or something that had Last Man Standing on it and Home Improvement like together and that they were working on something. And Kenny's like, "Do you think that maybe they could be like putting those two subjects together somehow and filming a new show?" And I was like, "I hope to hell they are."
I would say with Tim Allen, anything's possible.
I would agree. I would agree. So we talked about how social media and the internet creates opportunity. Now it also creating opportunity means many things. It creates opportunities for growth, business, anything, right? It also creates opportunity to feel really badly about ourselves because we see our neighbor has just bought this big, beautiful house, and they've got all the things, the picket fence, the Volvos, the everything that you want, right? And we look at that and we think, man, their life is perfect. That's exactly what I want. And I'm just not doing well enough. I'm not, excelling enough in life. So, what are some ways that we can use social media to help encourage people to feel better about themselves? And I'm not saying that that person posted on purpose to brag about what they have, but instead of using those posts to say, "Hey, I got this new shiny thing," what can we post instead to make people feel good about themselves?
That's a
Go
good
ahead, Kelly.
question.
I'm ready when you are.
Wow. That's a really good question now. I mean, this is a hard one because I'm not a person that does that, right? Like I don't like
Hmm.
so I'm the opposite, right? Like I think that I am the person like that I'm a cheerleader for the other people, right?
Hmm.
Yay, go girl,
Hmm.
giving all the emojis and the gifts. and the, all that. So, um, I think when, like, from a business owner standpoint, like, who's like, with your posting on social media, posting from a point of giving value versus, hey, look at me,
Mm,
kind of thing. Some like some coaches do that. So,
yeah.
um, you know, I just giving value.
Yeah. Okay. I love that. I love that. Even maybe some motivational
Yeah.
things occasionally to, it's Monday morning. People are feeling pretty trashy about Monday morning. Some bright, sunshiny quote about, how you're doing awesome
hmm
may even
I
be
think it's
helpful.
it's definitely a mindset thing
Yeah.
for sure.
No,
You
it
know,
definitely is. I
and
agree.
that's something that I work on with myself and I work on with my clients when they post, because posting on social media can feel like you are bragging about yourself.
Mhm.
Like, it's just the angle that you're coming from.
Yeah. I like that. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Good job, Kelly. You did so great, and then right there at the end, you stole my thunder because you took the one
Oh,
word I wanted to say, which for for
wow.
anyone listening that has followed my Facebook account, the one word that answers this is mindset, and it's key because that motivational content, that mindset evaluation that you're sharing with others is a way of eliminating the feeling of self promotion, but encouraging others to, it's a phrase I use from time to time, walk your own walk. And it's not meant to push you out on your own, but it's meant to say, look, success for me or for someone I know looks like this. Doesn't mean you can't obtain the same thing. You just have to commit yourself to walking your own walk.
Hmm.
And how you get to that point will be different for every single person.
Hmm.
And it takes the right mindset to not compare yourself to that other person that reached that success factor sooner,
Hmm.
because it could be right around the corner for you and you don't even know it. And having that positive, good mindset can get you there. But the minute you fall off of that wagon, we're right back on topic. It's like
Yeah.
you're comparing yourself negatively to what exists in the world. Therefore, so it's all mindset. And Kelly, good job for bringing that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all mindset. It's
It
one
all
one
is.
mindset.
Well, that's why
one
we
point for
need
Kelly.
yeah, 1 point Kelly won, Steve half. We'll give you
Zero.
half a point. No, you don't need a zero. You need half point. No, I mean that's why the social media world needs the Kelly Johnsons of the world, the cheerleaders, the mindset activators, and things like that, because we're never gonna stop certain types of posting. People are always going to have their reasons for why they need to post their new Lamborghini or whatever it is. And
Right.
those posts will always exist. And maybe they exist because someone's really, really proud of what they've accomplished and they could afford it and all that, those things. That's great. And I'm sure that there are people that post because they want people to feel beneath them, which is sad, but I mean, this is the world that we live in, and it's that exists, I'm sure. So that's why we do need to have those alternative posts. I typically, especially at certain times of the year, I think very seasonally, I tend to watch what I'm posting about in terms of like for instance the holidays. I know it's a really difficult time for people, and the last thing I want to do is post about some new Le Creuset cast iron pot that Kenny gave me for Christmas. And I used to do this because I was really passionate. It was also a way to just, connect with family members and them say, oh, hey, what'd you get for Christmas? That type of thing. But social media has evolved beyond that now. And the last thing I want to do is say, yeah, I got this really expensive piece of cookware that I don't need while there are people struggling in the world, I guess, is kind of where my mindset goes with that. But I don't want to be a person that contributes to someone's self-doubt, is what I'm saying.
But I think that there's also, like, you should be able to celebrate your things as
Yeah,
well.
I agree. I do agree.
And I think that, that's a hard one for me as well because, um, and I guess maybe this is a little off topic, but if we're talking about posting on social media, I don't have a huge family. And it's really hard sometimes to go on social media around Christmas time and see everybody's, photos of their big gatherings with their families for like starting at Thanksgiving or before and leading, all the way through January, like that's never going to happen for me.
Mm,
So, but
yeah.
yeah, you guys who have all the big families. So,
Yeah.
I just, it's, it's a fine line, I think.
You're
Again, and
right.
it comes back to mindset, you
It
know?
totally does. And there's nothing, yeah, I mean, and there are people that would counter what I said and say, well, it's my page, I'll post what I want. I totally get that. And you should. You absolutely should. You should be able to celebrate. I do agree with that. Um, I think it's just personally for me, I don't know. Maybe there's some underlying something going on for me too that makes me feel like why not really sure why I would think I should have that effect on somebody or why I think what I post changes anything in the social media realm. I don't know. Maybe there's just something underlying there, but no, I do agree. I think there's a way that you can celebrate and post your accomplishments and things like that without not attacking is not even the right word, but without
Bragging.
bragging. Yeah. And there's this term called
Uh-huh.
humble brag. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
Maybe.
Well, I don't exactly know what humble brag is, but
I would, I mean, I've heard I've heard it before, but to me those two words don't belong in the same phrase. So I'm like,
I
I've
agree.
someone someone created that and they're running with it and I just don't agree. So you either brag or you're humble. I don't see how the two can really be mixed together.
Okay, so Steve, how do you feel about posting accomplishments and celebrating wins?
I think accomplishments can be posted, celebrating wins are important, but again, if it's done in the correct mindset where perhaps you're sharing the tools
Mm,
that allowed you to achieve that result, I feel like you're promoting a positive mindset in others.
mm-hmm.
If you're posting it to say, "Oh my goodness, look at me," then you've hit the wrong mark, and that is where people will constantly fall into the syndrome of comparing themselves to others.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, I reached this milestone. I've worked for 10 years to get to this milestone. Here's how I did it. If anyone has any questions for me, feel free to reach out.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're doing it in a way that you're trying to positively influence your colleagues and friends to say, "Hey, join me in this. I'm willing to help you if you have questions."
Yeah.
And like Kelly said, cheer for me if you want, ignore me if you want. And again, some people choose to not even post their accomplishments for that very reason.
Mm-hmm.
They don't they don't want to feel like they're dividing the waters to see who's going to cheer, who's not going to cheer.
Yeah.
Um, that's a real thing too. And
Yeah.
then some people feel like they have to do it every day because that's what tells them they're good at what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's I don't
I
know.
agree. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Steve. If you're doing it in a way that provides, and like Kelly said earlier, provides value to people, if you're sharing an accomplishment or a win and you're telling people, you're sharing the tools and how you did this, why this happened, and give some context behind it, and even maybe shared some of the sufferings, because no great achievement comes without some sort of failure. And that kind of leads me into the next question, which, to combat this, we all know social media is a highlight reel for the most part. And then sometimes you get the occasional vulnerability post. Some more from others sometimes, and less from others sometimes. But do you feel that it is necessary in the world of social media to make extremely vulnerable posts to appear more humble?
say is that you're giving me permission to
Steve's
speak?
pointing. That's it. Pointing the finger. He's like, go.
Go, 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 go.
So I would say yes. Um that it makes you feel it portrays you as a human being. So if you are, like you're in business or like say you're trying to sell something or you're a course creator, content creator, something like that, it makes you more relatable, right?
Mhm.
And it makes you uh be able to sell your thing. Like people will buy into you that you're not just this untouchable
Everything's
person
perfect.
and everything's perfect and you have a maid and a butler and a cook and like a coach for the gym and someone stabs the corner of your lip, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so
I love that. I'm gonna do that from now on.
yeah, I think it definitely it makes you a human being, and yeah, everybody struggles.
Yeah.
So why not share it?
Yeah.
Occasionally I think maybe sometimes so you can go overboard with that. Like if you turn it into like a boohoo for me kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, then I'm kind of thinking about something that I had posted a couple years ago in a struggle that I had and a failure and then how I turned that around into a win. So yeah.
Okay. All right. I love it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and award the point to Kelly. Good job, Kelly. That was good.
You're
Um,
conceding already? Oh my gosh,
you
Steve.
know what? I'm out of the election. It's over. It's done. Good job, Kelly. No, that was good. And there's one thing that comes to mind for me that I was thinking about as you described that. Vulnerability is good, and definitely you can overkill it. Overkilling it immediately becomes negative. And I think there's a very fine line in the sand depending on the type of business you operate or the type of service you provide. Because if you're too vulnerable, even if you don't do it that frequently, that vulnerability could expose you in somewhat of a negative way to a potential client. Now, that client, depending on how they connect with you, could appreciate that vulnerability, but just as much, they could totally be against that vulnerability and say, you know what, maybe I don't want to risk this with this person because maybe they're not prepared for what lies ahead. So I think the key is a happy balance. And depending on the type of service you provide, you use that to define the level of vulnerability that you put out there to the world. Because if we keep our vulnerability somewhat private and we work on ourselves and we reserve that to what I call our key circle, our circle of influence,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I would rather share my vulnerability with my circle of influence and not with the world, because those are the people that are going to help me the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where the world in their judgment, they're just going to look at me and make judgment. They're going to make judgment from that. And it's interesting to hear this question because I think back and relatively speaking, I don't really venture down that road much. And maybe that's why.
You
Maybe
don't.
that's maybe that's why I do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I do occasionally the vulnerability post. I think I did one the other day, but kind of turned it
yep.
into like, oh, this turned into this. But I shy away from it sometimes because I get the feeling that when I do that for some reason, it looks like I'm complaining. And I don't know if that's just because people look at certain people and they automatically assume, what on earth could this girl have to complain about? Look at her. She works with her husband, or she does this, she has that, and that type of thing. She doesn't know real struggle. Like people make those assumptions just by looking at someone. And
Yeah.
it's that's tough too. And then I feel that imposter syndrome on that side of things where I shouldn't be doing this because I feel like people think I'm just complaining.
Well, it's interesting to hear you say that because I think some people, when they dive into their vulnerability post, especially the people, and not to be judgmental, but it happens every day in social media. It's like there are plenty of people that do it too often. And
Mm-hmm.
those people, I feel like sometimes they're even looking for cheerleaders or fans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like they're seeking them out. They're like, oh, here we go again. Here's my weekly vulnerability dump. Please jump in the comments. Please tell me how awesome I am. Tell me how beautiful I look today or how handsome I am. I feel like that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And in my mind, it's false. I don't know. It's like it's not producing results for that person. You might feel better for a day or two if 50 people comment and tell you how amazing you are. But guess what? On the third day, what are you going to do? You're going to write another vulnerability post probably.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't help you achieve your future. Um, I don't know. I just get that feeling when I see them from certain people over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of people commiserating together.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, hey, hell, cheer me up. It's like, here, read this, feel sorry for me, and then cheer me up, and we'll do it again in a couple days. That's what I feel like.
It's the
It's like,
commiserating committee.
right, right. And again, that doesn't help you. Where if you turn to your circle of influence and you say, "Hey, gang, help me out here. Provide some criticism that I can deal with and chew on for the next couple days,
Mm-hmm.
or steer me in a different direction." That's a true level of self-reflection, I think,
Mm-hmm.
that you can take what you learned from that experience, you can apply it to your future and build off of that. Where
Mm-hmm.
in the world of social media, you can't build off of what shows up in the comments. You can't. You need to have a filter and not take all those things to heart.
Yeah, I agree. And as we begin to wrap up here, and I know how these Jerry
Ah,
Springer final thoughts go, because Steve never actually read us the real definition of imposter
Oh
syndrome, which we'll
yeah, we were
save
waiting.
till right before
Yeah.
the end. But I think that one of the biggest things to take away from all of this is that imposter syndrome is very real. It's very common. It happens to everyone. And I totally agree with what you're both saying about mindset and how you approach what you're seeing on social media, because I'll tell you just from personal experience, if I would have seen something, the same post, graphic, caption, everything 5 years ago, I would react totally different to it than I would today. So, and that's a result of personal growth, mindset changes, and everything. So if you can consume content outside of that and avoid doom scrolling, because I'm sure we've all been there, where we find, then it's like we're punishing ourselves and looking for things to feel bad about ourselves with. But I think that if we can all realize that we're not alone in this and that it happens to everyone, and the more that we can grow our mindset and be healthy in that sense, then the better off we are and we have more ability to deal with it.
Agreed.
that's good.
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
So I welcome
What do
final
you
thoughts and
What do you
Steve.
got, Kelly?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if I get to share what the Nell story is this time.
Oh, yes. We haven't been doing What the Nell stories in this series. And I actually didn't even think about doing it. It's a staple on the What the Nell podcast. So, Kelly, I'll raise you one. You get to share a story, and then Steve has to share a story too.
Okay. And this can be like anything. Like it can be,
Anything.
oh,
It
okay,
doesn't
okay,
have to be about the topic, it can be about anything you want.
okay, okay. All right. So you guys know where I have my studio in Mount Joy. And I went to pay my rent one day. It was springtime. And I was walking down the sidewalk and I walked into the office and I gave my rent to Diana. And she's like, did that bird get you? And I'm like, bird? She's like, and then she proceeds to tell me about this blackbird that had made a nest in the bushes, right? Out in front of the gym. And I was like, no, it's gonna get me. And I believed her, but I just like wanted to see it for my own eyes. So like she had told me to like go in the crosswalk and like walk up the sidewalk on the opposite side of the street and then cross over like where my studio is. So I kind of listened and I kind of didn't. And I was like, I was tiptoeing. If there was only video of this, it would be even more amazing. So I was tiptoeing, because the birds can hear you. And I was like tiptoeing in behind her, in behind the vehicles that were parked down in that section. And all of a sudden, I hear this. It's like,
oh my gosh,
like this bird dive bomb me in the back of the head.
No,
I'm serious. It hit me in the back of the head, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? Well, I'm pretty confident I said some other words, but we'll keep it clean.
You said, what the Nell?
Yeah, right. And I'm like, I just got attacked by the bird. And so I got in my car and I emailed Diana, and I'm like, that a-hole bird got me.
That did bird.
And I am not kidding, but I think I might have had a concussion from that.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Like I was confused. Like I knew that I had some other errands to do, but I wasn't sure what they were at that moment. And I had a headache for several hours.
No way.
Yeah, way. And I'm like, I think I just should go home because that's probably the best place for me right now. And so I went home and
I don't even want to like, if you were in serious like health debacle, I don't want to laugh and like, but you got concussed by a bird.
So yeah, so that's my what the Nell story.
Not that I'm an animal cruelty person or anything like that, but if that would have happened to me, I can't promise the bird would be okay.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what I would have done. I probably just would have done my normal, like, when flies or bees come around me, I just kind of go crazy, and I probably would have just smacked it to death.
Well, it came behind me, so I didn't even see it. So this thing Pearl Harbored me, like, yeah.
What? Why? Like, does anybody know what happened to the bird?
Well, it was protecting its nest, so there must have been
it must have been a nest in the bush. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
oh my god.
Yeah, it was some kind of like blackbird. I don't know.
Well, Kelly, if you drive home from work today and a bird flies into your front window and it doesn't survive, just be like, look.
I'm gonna be like, maybe, ha ha ha.
Karma.
Maybe it's a relative or a brother-in-law or something like that of the bird.
That happens here at our house. Sometimes, like during the spring, a lot, because we have like a big window in the front of our house, and I will hear like this bang like during the day, and I get scared because I'm by myself, and I'm like, what is that noise? And it's usually a bird that hits the window and doesn't make it.
It's interesting. I looked into that once because it happens to my house every year. They see their reflection.
Yeah.
And when they're in their mating modes or whatever, they think they're communicating and interacting with another bird, and it's themselves. And for some reason, the same bird will keep flying into the same piece of glass over and over again. So they're suffering from short-term memory loss, I guess.
I actually had to put pictures of owls on my other windows because last year I had a bird pecking at my windows for that very reason.
Yeah.
And I was, while I was concerned about my window, I was also concerned about the bird. Like, dude, after you do that so many times, there's going to be a breaking point.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had that issue at a place I used to work at. There was this just like constant pecking at the window, and I didn't realize at the time that owls kind of kept that at bay. So
that was a good one to Nell's story. Thanks for sharing.
I do. Yeah, thank you. I love it. Steve, you're gonna have to top a bird pelting someone in the head.
Well, you know what? Everybody's going to be disappointed. I did not come prepared. I do not have a what the Nell
Oh,
moment
come on, Steve
Are you
on the
Trott.
top
sure?
of my. I
You were
don't. I don't
you
like.
were Steve Trott. You have to have the story.
You don't
I
even want to
don't.
talk about how you learned about eating cicadas last night at a networking event?
All right. 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 So it's funny you say that because that was the one thing that popped into my head a few minutes ago. I'm like, I guess I could talk about that.
Yeah.
So we're at this event last night. We'll throw a plug in for RPP Referrals Partners Plus out of Lancaster.
There you go.
It's a networking group of 11 chapters now, and one of the members of my chapter in York, the White Rose chapter, his name is Ryan Bridge. He's actually someone the listeners might get to meet here in the future,
Mhm.
and he decided to share with us that consuming cicadas grilled with your favorite topping has become something people do. And I don't know how many people in the world eat these cicadas, but
I was just say
apparently,
people or Ryan.
right, Mr. Ryan Bridge, the bug man of the
Mhm.
United States, eats grilled cicadas, and he says they are quite not bad. He
No.
basically said they can be enjoyed, and people, yeah. So I guess one day it'll have to be tried, but we'll call
I
that
don't
the.
know.
Yeah, I don't know either,
I
and
don't
that's why
know.
it's a good what
Not
the
bad.
now like.
Not bad doesn't also mean good either.
It's so
No,
true.
the way he described it was like he'd sit down and have a meal of grilled cicadas and have no problem with it.
Yeah, he did. He definitely said that. He said if you put like Old Bay on or something, he said cicadas taste like nothing. He said they don't taste like
Yeah,
anything. But if you do grill, I think he said was it the baby ones, or if you over grill them a little bit, they taste like popcorn.
Oh no.
yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
I,
something
no.
tastes, I
it
think.
that I just want to leave it as what the Nell, like
What
the
the
Nell
hell?
is. What the Nell is that, Ryan? Let's hear about it in the future. Schedule time. Let's meet at the grill and prove it to me. Prove it to me.
I'm not saying I wouldn't try it.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence. So, with that being said, and I know if the listeners are hanging on, I do want to read because I found it quite interesting, and I think it's even safe to say when I read through what I'm about to tell you, I actually think we could follow up to this on another recording, and maybe
Okay.
we'll do that. So
All right.
let me read this for you guys. I think you're going to be shocked at what
Oh.
you hear. So,
Is this the definition
imposter.
of imposter syndrome?
Well, we're going to read one definition, and then I'm going
Okay.
to read something that I found interesting that was shared by a doctor.
Got
So
it.
the condition, okay, imposter syndrome is the condition of feeling anxious and not experiencing success internally, despite being a high performing individual externally. Now, it's interesting because I think we kind of summed that up. They use some synonyms: fraud, feeling phony, things like that.
Hmm.
We summed that up pretty well. Interestingly enough, themuse.com did an article dates back to 2022, and an expert on the subject, Dr. Valerie Young, has categorized imposter syndrome into 5 groups. And this is where I think it gets interesting. The 5 groups of this syndrome are: one, the perfectionist. And if you are a perfectionist, you're automatically right in the category because the minute you don't hit your perfection, you are suffering from imposter syndrome.
Hmm.
Number 2, superwoman or superman. It's the mentality that you can do anything is automatic.
Hmm.
Number 3, the natural genius suffers from imposter syndrome regularly. Number 4, which is a key one because it happens to me all the time, the soloist, the person that says, I can do everything without anyone's help, is suffering from imposter syndrome. And then number 5, the expert about everything. If you're the expert about everything, you are a living example of imposter syndrome. And
Oh,
it's a very interesting article. I'm going to share it with you guys.
yeah.
Um, it's a good read.
Okay.
It's a good read, and I think it's going to leave the listeners with some things to stew on, and maybe we'll bring it back full circle.
Yeah. Well, we can put the link to the article in the show notes
Yeah, I'm
for
all
people
for it.
to
Whatever
read.
you want to do. You're
Yeah.
the boss. You're the boss.
Yeah. So if you want to check out that article that Steve is referring to, check out the show notes and find the link for that if you want to read up on imposter syndrome and the 5 different types of people that fall into the category of people experiencing it.
Well, and one thing I should share real quick is she does break down the cure. So each one of those categories, she gives you the tips and tricks of how to work through those individual categories if you fall into them. So
Ooh, yeah.
it's a good read. It's a good
Okay.
read.
Definitely. We'll definitely have to share that article. So Steve, hop on that, please, for me. Send me that
It's
link
coming
and
your
I will
way.
I'll post that in like I said, the show notes. So awesome. Well, you guys, I think we had a really good conversation here today about imposter syndrome and the social media world and how it relates. So I want to thank you both for being here and sharing your thoughts and sharing your What the Nell stories.
This is my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Let's
Absolutely.
go grill some cicadas.
Let's go grill some cicadas. All right, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. Please go find this podcast on your favorite platform, subscribe to it, leave us a review. That's how we grow here at the What the Nell podcast. And if you are not watching on YouTube, go ahead on over to the channel, subscribe, like the video, and all of the things. And so that we can continue making awesome content and bringing awesome people like Kelly and Steve on for you. So thank you again for listening. And as always, I will catch you on the next one.
To learn more about how to tell your story, connect with Nell at enTICEingmedia.com. That's ENTICEING media.com. Thanks for listening to the What the Nell podcast.